not love him the way I do. But sometimes, when somebody else comes along and shows you what he means to them, it seems to inspire you to find him again yourself to a greater extent. At least that has been my experience. So I couldn't think of anything better to talk about than God. When I say better than that, I mean the literal subject of God. What is God to you? How do you think of him? What part in your life does he take? What time of your life is he given? I just want to find out for myself every time when I ask these questions. And you get various answers. So I thought perhaps you might, with me, try to find out just how dear and how near he is to you. And then I think by tomorrow night, well, maybe we wouldn't need a meeting, but we'll discover that, shall we? I was in a meeting once in a little town outside Johannesburg in South Africa where a new church had just been opened, just a small church. I hope I won't shock you as I did them. But when I got there, one of the ladies of the church said, "Oh, but Mrs. Dekoch, I forgot to ask you. You are converted and saved, aren't you?" So I said, "Oh dear, I wonder. I think I'd better wait till we get into church to tell you, because you've left it a little late now, The people are expecting me to come in." And I went into that church, and I said that I felt it was good if I asked them all the question that had been asked me just outside the church. And I said, "I'm sure this dear lady is most agitated to get my answer. So I'll ask all of you, are you all here converted and saved?" And every hand shot up. Well, it was just amazing. Why, I said that I can go home. What have I to tell you? You are all safe in the kingdom. And I take it that nobody ever nags. Nobody ever says an unkind thing. Nobody ever tells a lie here. And nobody ever could do anything wrong, because you are saved, aren't you? Utterly converted and saved. And I said, "Oh, would you like to answer that question now? How many of you are?" To my amazement, not a hand went up. Well, I said, "Then we're awfully good friends. We'll start." You see, this is a smug statement that so many people have accepted without realizing what it means. To be converted is to be entirely changed. Entirely changed. Therefore, you are saved from the difficulties that you would encounter if you were not converted. You ever thought of that? No, some people think that just to believe in the Word of God, and they don't even know what that means. Because I don't see how you can believe in the Word of God until you've done it. You might say, "Well, yes, I'm sure it must be true. It's the Bible. And after all, I go to church every Sunday and I pray." Oh, yes, I do believe. But you don't believe till you do it. You can't even know that it's true till you do it. No matter even if Jesus said so and he lived it and proved it. But it isn't true for you, and it isn't true for me until we live it, then we know. Then we know. Once my son said to me, "I've read your book, Mummy, and I can't follow any of it." And it was a long time before he read it. Once children never do, and it's good that they shouldn't. But he had read it then, and he said, "I can't follow that, Mummy." And I said, "No, well, why follow it, dear? You don't agree with it." He said, "I can't see it. It just doesn't mean a thing to me," a certain paragraph that he'd read. Well, I said, "Forget all about it, dear. It isn't time for you to want to be that or to live that. Just forget all about it. The time isn't here for you to understand it. Put it out of your head and forget it." About a year later, I heard him say to his friend who was in great trouble, "Why, Fred, I'll tell you how to act. I've proved it. I've done it." And he quoted this whole paragraph. It wasn't a very loud one, but he quoted it. So I said afterwards, "Why, John, that was such sound advice you gave your friend." "Well, Mother, it's true," he said. "I've tried it out and it works." He had forgotten where he'd read it. "Why I've told you that is this." And of course no sensible mother would say, "Well, John, that's out of my book." That would be the most foolish motive on earth. The best way is to let him not know where he found it, that it was his own truth. And it was. He had lived it at last somewhere. He probably had an experience that made him live it, and he proved it. And it was his own truth forever, just as it was mine when I wrote it, or I couldn't have written it. And so you see, we do not know whether things are true until we do them. Definitely we don't. That's why I thought we'd start with God to find out why it is some of us don't love him enough. Why it is that some of us go around with long faces. Why is it that in the midst of our sorrows we don't see joy? Why is it in the midst of sometimes estrangements and little things that happen between us, why don't we find God right deep down in the midst of that difficulty until we're radiating a light that makes the other person we've been estranged from kind of envy us? That is the way to attract each other, not by trying to make ourselves look attractive for each other, but by being so filled with God that we are unconsciously attractive. If I be lifted up, will draw all men unto me, Jesus said. It's nothing to do with you. It's nothing to do with me. It's the I, if I be lifted up, will draw all men. Yes, even that person you are estranged from, because you're no longer seeking for them to become one with you. You just become one with God. And in the becoming one with God, you automatically become attractive to everybody who's seeking that joy that you have. And it cannot come to us. It just cannot until we know who God is and what is God to us. You've read this chapter 100 times. I hope that you will get a new light on it tonight. In the beginning was the Word. I have learned that every moment is the beginning. In the beginning was the Word. And the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. Isn't it marvelous? You just think that all life is a beginning. It's always a beginning. So you're forever with God if you want to be, and with his Word. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. Well, that makes a pretty sound foundation for us, doesn't it? Very secure, very secure. All things were made by him, all things. And without him was not anything made that was made. Well, that gives me a comfortable feeling right away. I don't have to go to anybody then for anything, but just back to the source of all things. Where is that source? We're going to find out. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. And that light shineth in darkness, does it? Have you found that it does? And that light shineth in darkness. The darkness comprehendeth it not. Isn't that a blessing? Because as soon as the light is shining in you, there is no darkness to comprehend it. It's just marvelous when you see the Bible like this. Sometimes I think it was written in riddles or puzzles so that we should dig deep down to see what there is underneath. You know, Jesus called it a treasure hidden down in that third measure of meal. A little leaven that leavened the lump. It was a hidden treasure. It was a pearl of great price. This was a hidden treasure. For me, the Bible is a treasure hunt. And I hope you don't think I'm irreverent, but I have fun. Joyous fun in my treasure hunt. The Bible isn't a bit dull to me. A lot of people say, don't you read any other books now? I said, no, I never read any other books. Because all the people who write books are writing about what they have found, about their treasures. I like to find my own. The treasures that are your own forever. Otherwise you'll be saying, well, Mr. So-and-so said, and this book says, and that man says, and she told me. Oh, it takes an awful lot of breath, doesn't it, to say all those things. But when it comes direct from God, oh, it's a wonderful thing to remember. That the light shineth in all darkness, no matter what your darknesses are. But that darkness wouldn't comprehend it. So the moment you find yourself with light, your darkness is gone. Light a match just at the door of a pitch dark room. Is it dark? Is it dark? But nobody can bring a handful of darkness into this room and make this dark. Light is the greatest thing. There was a man sent from God whose name was John. The same came for a witness to bear witness of that light, that all men through him might believe. Now he was not that light, but was sent to bear witness of that light. That was the true light. This is the verse. Which lighteth every man that cometh into the world. Every man that cometh into the world. That was the true light that would light them. Every man. No respecter of persons. Well then, how is it we've got so little light in the world? Every man, that is what he is lighted with, that light. How is it then that there is so little light all around, apparently? It is because men and women have lost their awareness of the light within. So when they lose this light, and I'm not going to talk about nations and groups of people, but individuals, because it's the individual that has to find God. It's the individual that has to find his own joy. It's the individual that has to find his own security. Everything is with the individual. The responsibility lies with me, and it lies with you. And God knew that, and in his graciousness, when he planted within each one of us this portion of himself, these potentialities of his, when he did that within each one of us, do you see the glorious freedom he gave us? A marvelous freedom. A beautiful responsibility, yes, but a freedom. But you see, men loved darkness rather than light. They preferred to imagine that they were little gods all on their own. A little drop falling out of the ocean might just as well pretend it could carry a ship to China. Until that drop of the ocean goes back into the ocean, it isn't able to do that. But once it's back in the ocean, it is as responsible or has the same power with all the other drops to carry that ship to China. And so if man goes on remaining in his consciousness a separate being from God, he never will accomplish very much. Never. He may do a great deal of good works. He may do things that look important in the world. He may make a pile of money. He may become a very famous man, a very popular man. When I say men, I mean women too. I've always wondered why everybody says man, because women are just as responsible, but it's easy to say man, isn't it? I remember once my father kicking against that. He says, why ever do they say man is responsible? I consider woman is too. He's right, quite right. So we'll know what we mean when we say man. And so you see, what I feel about this is, as long as this idea of separation goes on, no matter what it is about, there will never be any everlasting work done in the world. It's going to be works that are dead. There is no life in a work that has been done or accomplished with the motive for fame or causing, shall I say, security or feeling it's a cause of security. There is no life in it. No life in it at all. The only life in any work that has any life in it, is that work which is done to the glory of God. I knew a businessman in Johannesburg who started off marvelously well. He had a small staff at that time, and they used to come into the office and pray before the business hours began. And they used to have the most wonderful times there together, and the whole day was blessed by God. Gradually this business grew until he was a very rich man, but he had lost his ideal in the idol. There was no longer any time to have those little meetings before the day began. There was no longer time. He was too busy making money, far too busy. Oh, he said, God blessed this business. He made it prosperous. Oh, he blessed it, and it was prosperous. But beyond the time when he has ceased to have it blessed or prayed for, it was dead works. All things are dead that are not done with the Spirit of God in it. You see, Jesus said, my words are spirit, and they are life. That is why they've never been forgotten. His deeds followed up his words. Whatever he said, he did. Therefore, there was life in everything he did. Life in everything he said. Have you ever read a book and you thought, well, now this author aspires to what he's writing, but I don't believe he lives it. I don't feel any power in the book. And then have you opened a book and started just the first page and thought, how that book grips me from the beginning. That man has lived it. He is speaking with authority. Well, that was what Jesus was like. I love this Bible. You know, what I love about it is I discovered something one morning, some years ago. I thought, all this thick part in the beginning is telling about the coming of Jesus. All this part at the end is telling what will happen if you receive his Spirit. This little tiny part in the middle is him and all his activities. You see, God the Father, God the Son in expression, God the Spirit. This is the activity of the Spirit. The middle was the expression of God through the Son. So therefore, this is the kernel, or I am the life, right in the middle. And therefore, I just love the Sermon on the Mount. To me, the Sermon on the Mount is the key to knowing what God is. You and I could not grasp what God is. He is too vast. Why, if you just look at the firmament, if you look at nature, try to count the blades of grass, try to count the leaves on a tree, or the feathers on a bird, or the hairs on your head. Try. Or the grains of sand on the seashore. Just try to comprehend the mind of God. And your mind would reel. You just couldn't. Because the absolute of anything is beyond man's comprehension. We can only stand in awe before that great and wondrous being who causes the clouds to burst and drop their dew on every blade of grass. It's just almost beyond you, the wonder of that absolute God. But to think that Jesus came and reflected or expressed the full nature of this wonderful being, so that we knew what he was like, and that he was our Father. Yes, in what sense is he our Father? He is the life of my life. He is the love of my love. He is the truth of my truth. All that I am potentially within is of my Father. Without him I am not. Without him I have nothing. Without him I could not be. Therefore, you see, God, although so vast and beyond our finite mind, yet to think of him and know him as this, that very cause of me, my heavenly Father, from whom my spirit extends. And in him I live and move and have my being. Don't you see how close that is? That great impersonal God who sends his rain and sunshine on the just and on the unjust, because his whole nature is love. His whole nature is to give. His whole desire is to give us his kingdom. He's even jealous. I, thy God, am a jealous God. Jealous because he doesn't want us to accept anything less than he can give us. What love! The jealousy you and I have known is quite a different jealousy. It is that people shall not have what is ours. God is jealous that we shall choose anything less than he could give us. What a love! But we couldn't comprehend that except as Father. So when Jesus said, "Ye must be born again of the Spirit," what he really meant was, and of course you know this, but being reminded of it is so wonderful. I remind myself of these truths every day of my life, that they may be so established within my consciousness that I shall never lose my love for him, not in any particle of my life. And so, you see, if you think of him as Spirit, your Heavenly Father, God is Spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth, then you see what it means to be born again. You have to lose the awareness or the entire consciousness of this body. What is this body? Is not the body more than the raiment? Then is not the life more than this body? And that is the Spirit, the light, the life, that life which lighteth every man. This is God in you, the Spirit, the life, and you are born of him. And the quickening of the Spirit, which is the awareness dawning within you of who you really are, is likened to the quickening of a child in a mother's womb. She feels the quickening and she knows the child is born. That is alive. And that is the human quickening of the human body. Feeling that life that is within the womb. But this quickening is of the Spirit. This ecstasy, this dawning of the mind into that idea that God is all. God is all. Call no man Father but God. Meaning that your first attention, your deepest attention is rooted in the fact that God is the source of you. Therefore, if he is, he must be within you. The kingdom of heaven is within you. Oh, that is a wonderful thing to me to know. That I don't have to run hither and thither looking for God. I don't have to search without for what I have within. I don't have to hunt for some kingdom far away or plead to a God way out there somewhere to give me the things I need. But to be conscious of the Spirit of my own Father within me, prompting me, guiding me, like my earthly father did when I was a little girl, guiding me in my school days, in my childhood, in the best way he knew how, guiding me as a child, a human child. So is my Father, his Spirit, within me, guiding my soul, teaching my soul, feeding and sustaining my soul. I have my own Father with me forever. So have you. But you may not be aware of it. And so you're not joyous, you're not happy. But the moment you know that you have your Father with you always, who is the creator of all good things, who desires only to give you of his good, surely that should give you tremendous joy. Even in the face of the things around you that look, well, you don't feel too secure, then go within and find your security. You don't feel happy, then go within and find your happiness, the source of happiness. It's the source of security. It's the source of love. Oh, sometimes when people come to me and say they've lost somebody, which of course isn't true, nobody's ever lost anybody, there isn't a place to lose them. Where could you lose them? In God's universe. It's the same with people saying, oh, I've lost the most valuable thing. You haven't. It's lost to you, but somebody else has found it. It's never lost. Oh, it's a wonderful thing to know nothing is lost. Couldn't be in God's kingdom. If it's all his, where can it get lost to? No, it's this spirit of me and mine. Don't touch this, this is mine. That's what gives the sense of loss to people. But get rid of that and know yourself as part of God, and you've never lost anything. You never do lose anything. Never. It's a big thing to grasp at first. But when you've grasped it, you're free forever. Free forever in your consciousness about such things. So the rebirth brings you a new idea of life. It brings you a new outlook on life. Suddenly you're more aware or more conscious of wanting to feed the spiritual child than the earthly child. First things come first, and the rest just follows. Seek ye first the kingdom, and all these things shall be added unto you. A man said to me the other week, well, maybe it's worthwhile seeking that kingdom. You seem to get everything. Oh, I said, with that motive, it wouldn't be any use seeking the kingdom. You don't seek the kingdom because you're going to get things added unto you. You seek the kingdom for the sake of the kingdom, and automatically the things are added unto you. If the first concern is to seek the kingdom, that's the only thing you think about. You know the paradoxes of this Bible are just wonderful. So you have to live it to find out what it's all about. This rebirth or new birth or being born again has worried some people so, and there's nothing to worry about. It's just an awareness. Of which are you most aware? The earthly house of flesh, which you are using now to develop and to grow, so that your soul should become one with God. Are you more concerned with the house than with that which inhabits it? I am not this body, neither am I this mind, but I am that spirit within this body, using this mind. Therefore, does the body have dominion over my spirit, or does my spirit have dominion over my body? So many people just confuse the two. Just the two. My little granddaughter's got it perfectly. When she does anything naughty, she comes in and she says, do you know Diana Hamilton's been very naughty again? I said, well, did you tell her how terrible she was? She said, no, I forgave her. That's herself. No, I forgave her. Oh, if we could only learn to forgive ourselves. Wouldn't it be wonderful? But she's got that so clearly. She fell out of a tree a little while before I came away. She was a terrible little tomboy. I think children are nice like that. And she fell out of the tree, which was good too. She wouldn't go so high again. And she had quite a damaged neck and back. She couldn't move it. And my daughter phoned me and she said, Mummy, what shall I do? You know what she's like? She always says God will heal her, because I taught her that too. And she said, but don't you think I should get a doctor to her? She can't move her neck. So I said, will you go and ask her what she thinks, and then come back and tell me. So she evidently went and asked her, and she came back to the telephone, and she said, Diana said, well, you could get a doctor, Mummy, but God will have to tell him what's wrong first. Why don't we ask God? Isn't that sweet faith? So that night, my daughter was still a little worried. And she phoned me again after the child had really settled down for the night. And she said, Mommy, I just can't help being a little worried. What do you think she said when she went to sleep? I said, I don't know. She said, Dear God, my gran said that you made me. Well, if you did, you ought to know how to mend me. And will you please do it while I'm asleep, and don't you hurt me much. I think it's the most beautiful little prayer. And in the morning, her neck was healed, and she took it for granted, and she said to my daughter, he did it. Just like that. Oh, if I could hear grown-up people. So simple and childlike in their faith. He made me. He ought to know how to mend me. But you see, it's loving him enough to be sure that he can. It's living so close to him that he is at hand. This is all the difference in the world between being close to him and not close to him. And yet the paradox is so strange. He is never away from you. He is the very life in you, the very breath of you, closer than hands and feet. Aren't we foolish to lose our awareness of his closeness? Oh, you say, if you had my business problems all day long, racing here and there, you'd know that it's difficult to be aware of him. Do you find it difficult to be aware of your business? Do you? Why then should it be difficult to be aware of something else? It's merely transferring your thoughts. People say to me sometimes, I couldn't meditate. I just couldn't. But I said, you do. You talk all day long about your ailments. I never heard such complete meditation and concentration in all my life. Or if somebody does something wrong, they can meditate on that without any interruption of any thought whatsoever. Of course, everybody can meditate, but it's the way they do it. And having practiced so long to meditate in one direction, it's a little difficult to get over to the other side. But the other becomes an achievement then, you see, which is so worthwhile. Anybody can just sink down under the weight of negativity. Anybody can, because it's become a worldwide, easy habit. But to conquer that would be different. Oh, that is an achievement. Yes, in the midst of a very busy day. That is the time to practice going within. And in my work, all these 20 years that I've been doing this work, I have found that it's like having a companion, it's like having a husband, a brother, it's like having somebody with you all the time. And you just turn in for 1 second. What shall I do, Lord? You might say, well, who are you talking to? Where is he? Where is he? Who do you commune with when you pray? A God way up there, all around you, or that quiet place within? Even businessmen who have to get quiet, they'll say sometimes to their family, now please leave me alone, I've got to be quiet, something big's coming off tomorrow and I've got to somehow be quiet and let ideas come to me. Where do they come from? Where are they all coming from? Where does he expect they're coming from? There's nobody in the room, he wants to be alone. Where is he getting them from? They're coming out of that great one mind, ever present. It's God. God the revealer. But if we do not acknowledge that it is God, we may not get the right direction. Acknowledge God in all thy ways, and he will direct thy path. Because the moment you acknowledge the presence of God, there he is. The awareness causes you to feel him. The awareness or the acknowledgement of God is he is here. I've had amazing experiences where I could prove to you in the midst of seeming danger. For instance, in Johannesburg, we're told that there are certain parts that you wouldn't walk at night. The natives are, they're just raw and a bit rough, and there aren't any lights down in some of those areas. But with my kind of work, I was often called out in those areas. And I used to have to walk because I didn't have a car. And I would go down knowing that where I was going, they needed me. And one night, a lot of people used to warn me that one day I would be attacked. Isn't that a lovely picture to give you? To me, that's one of the most priceless things that your loving friends do. They hand you out the most valuable pictures. If I loved somebody, I think I should want to say, oh, isn't it wonderful God is with you all the way, dear. Not take care, those men are always attacking women. To me, that isn't love. I just think that's awful. And yet mothers do it to their children. Instead of placing them in the consciousness of God ever present. Oh, how much we have to unlearn and how much we have to do for our children that we've never done. Anyhow, I was walking back and it was nearly midnight. And it was pitch dark and there were a lot of natives all sort of standing around. And, it looks a bit grim, at night when there aren't any lights and you're alone. And presently I heard a pitter-patter behind me and I knew that this was one of those precious pictures somebody had given me. And they usually just take their hand and they strike them across the back of the neck and you're down. You're out for a little while, I'd imagine. I've never had it done, but I've heard so. So he was almost close upon me and suddenly I said, Father, take charge. And he did the most amazing thing. It was just as if God turned me round. And I said to this boy, oh, how wonderful. Please walk home with me. It's so dark. Please do. Well, he stood back. huge native, and he didn't know what to say. And I said, "Oh, please do. It's so dark. Won't you walk home with me?" And he walked beside me all the way till I got to the lighted main street. And when I opened my bag to give him some money, he said, "No, Missy, I can't." Because he'd known what he was going to do. I acknowledged the presence of God, and the God in him came to life. The God in the boy who was going to do what he was going to do, it brought the God alive in him. So he became my friend and walked home with me. And I believe that no matter where you are or what you're doing, it makes no difference. If you acknowledge the presence of God, God is there, but you must acknowledge it immediately. I was in the same predicament when I was right up on the border of Tibet about 5 years ago. And I am a little careless about things like this, you know. You have to have permits to do all these things. And I never sort of think I ought to have the permit with me. I've had that happen to me many times. And I went up to this place, Sikkim on the border of Tibet, and should have had my permit with me to be allowed to get in. But I had left it behind 50 miles down the mountains, or in the Himalayas, way back in a place called Kalimpong. And suddenly I didn't know what to do. All the Tibetans got round the car as I was entering this place, and they're not they're a little fierce looking. And the driver of the car said, "Well, where's your permit?" And I said, this was the Anglo-Indian who was driving me, and I said, "I left it behind." Well, he said, "They'll never let you through without that. And there's going to be a lot of trouble. They're getting angry." Suddenly I remembered that the Buddhist religion is recognizing the one self in everybody. I wish we Christians did that more. I don't say that I shouldn't like anybody to prefer Buddhism to Christianity, but what I mean is I wish that we would have that sense of the one self in everybody, and the Buddhists do. And when they do this salam, it means I salute the one self in you. It's a sign of deeper friendship than just salam, because salam is how do you do, but salam is saluting that self within you, that spirit. And I remember this, and I could easily do that because I love all peoples, no matter who they are, what color, creed, or anything else. They're all God's children to me. Somehow, somewhere deep within them is this spark that hasn't yet perhaps come into a flame, but the spark is there. And so I started to salam. I didn't know whether it would be any good, but I just thought if I showed them that I knew that the one self was in them too. So I began to salam. I did it about 3 times, and they all got away, and they smiled and laughed and let me through. So I said to the Anglo-Indian, "Why did they let me through when I did that?" He said, "They would think that anybody who would salute the one spirit couldn't be a cheat." You see, there's something in this knowing, isn't there? There's something in this knowing, acknowledging God that gets you through anything. So now, what is God to you? Is God this close companion? Is he? Some people have said when I've talked like this, but you're not saying anything about Jesus. Now, let's get this complicated. To me, Jesus is the most glorious and wonderful being that ever lived, and without him, I would never have known God as I know him. But Jesus forever pointed us to the Father. Jesus came back to tell us to come back to the Father. His whole mission was, you've forgotten God. And then when the disciples would have almost worshipped him, it was, "Oh, worship not me, but the Father. It is expedient for you now that I go away, that the Spirit, the Holy Spirit, the Comforter, the Teacher, may come. Then you shall all have that within you." Then he says later on here in Luke, "Even then I shall not even have to ask the Father anything for you, but you shall ask him. He has loved you just as he loves me. And then you shall ask him anything in my name," love's name, "and he will grant it to you." So Jesus was forever pointing us to this closer relationship of God within. You love Jesus not less because of that, but more. More because he showed you the way. The kingdom of heaven is within you. The kingdom of heaven is at hand. If the kingdom of heaven is within me, where else shall I look for the treasures of the kingdom? Where else could I look? Yet, if I find all these treasures within me, and I begin to develop them, I begin to use them, I begin to let them shine like jewels through me, I shall know if you've got them, and you will know if I've got them. And I shall see in you the treasures of the kingdom, and you will see them in me, and that makes us one. He who walks in the light as God is in the light has fellowship one with the other. That is the meaning of brotherhood, of fellowship, of oneness. There's going to be no other way. The nations can try any amount of ways to bring the brotherhood of man about. They never will, till every individual has found the kingdom. And when he finds the kingdom, everybody else has found it. You're in the kingdom. You're in the kingdom now. You know, when you think of it, we're always, at least a great many Christians I know, are always thinking, oh, wouldn't it be wonderful when this weary sojourn is ended and I can taste the bliss. I don't believe I know what it is. Why, if you're only going to taste it there, how are you going to know anything about it till you've tasted it here? I really don't understand how people can talk about this bliss beyond. To me, there isn't any break off. If you have this bliss here, it's going to be, of course, more wonderful out of the body. But would you want to hasten off if you found the joy here? Wouldn't you be glad to just go as God will call you in time that he has for you to go? Not hurry and hasten. Oh my, I know it's going to be wonderful, but it's wonderful now. I'm enjoying every minute of this life, of the wonder of being able to show other people the way. Why, it's the greatest fun in the world to show somebody the way. When little children come to me with their problems, they want to know the way. Isn't it wonderful to know the way? Then it is our job to learn what is the way. Mothers and fathers don't give themselves enough time to know how to show their children the way. But there is a way, such a wonderful way. And such a lot of Christians are missing it. They're Christians, but I'll tell you how far they've gone. They've gone as far as the disciples when they were sorrowful that the master was going away. And he kept telling them that they would have him again, they would have his spirit, and then everything that he had said would come back to their memory, and they wouldn't be alone. He'd walk with them in spirit. They would remember everything he said, and they would be able to remember every moment of his companionship. But they couldn't see that. They just couldn't see it. Then you see, when he did get crucified, why, then they were lost. So some of them went back to their nets. Such a lot of Christians go back to their nets. Such a lot of Christians have believed, and then, because there doesn't seem to be anything spectacular happening, they go back to their nets. And that is where a lot of Christians are today. They're very, very few compared with all the thousands upon thousands who call themselves Christians. There are very, very few who go and sit in that upper room and receive the Spirit of God every morning, every day. That upper chamber was symbolic of us rising from the lower states of consciousness, of misery and worry and all the things we do worry about. That to rise above that and enter into a higher state of consciousness, or the upper chamber of the mind, and there to be with one accord, in one place, waiting for his Spirit. He could do it every morning. That isn't a story in the Bible just to read. It is a personal experience every day. To rise above those thoughts you have when you get out of bed in the morning, I expect you're the same as anybody else in the world. You wake up and you think, oh, I don't feel too good. I haven't slept very well. I've got such a hard day in front of me. What's this thing disturbing me? Oh, yes, that thing that happened yesterday. That's still on my mind. I don't feel at all like going forward today. And for anyone to tell you at that minute to say, this is the day the Lord hath made, I will rejoice and be glad in it, you'd say, oh, go in the kitchen and sing that by yourself. Well, that's the sort of thing, you see, that proves that we haven't gone into the upper room. You see, it's only natural that sometimes your husband gets out of bed the wrong side, and sometimes the wife gets out of bed the wrong side. But that's the opportunity for the other one to lift them up a bit. Because if you both always got out the right side, there wouldn't be any credit due to you for overcoming irritability, would there? I always say you never know if you cease to be irritable till somebody tries to make you. You couldn't know. How could you know whether you could rejoice and be glad if somebody falsely accused you, unless they did falsely accuse you? You have to prove these things. And it's been my experience that when I say, oh, Lord, I want to serve you, I just want to do whatever you would like me to do. He said, you do? I'm going to give you a terrible lot of opportunities today. That's perhaps one of the darkest days you ever get. Because with you, when you say that, he gives you all your chances to do it. And that's opposition. Why, he says, what is it if you love them who love you? You don't do any more than anybody else. What is it if you salute your brethren only? That's nothing, that's easy. He wanted us to see that we could do things that didn't look too easy. There was a native boy on our, we say lifts in South Africa, you say elevators. Well, there was a boy on the elevator there, where I lived. He called himself Chrysler. Our natives take on any name that sounds nice and fancy, and he obviously loved Chrysler cars, so he calls himself Chrysler. So one day he said to me, ran to open the door of the lift for me, and he said, I said, Chrysler, why do you always run to open that for me every time I come? He said, 'cause I love you, Missy. So I said, oh, I see, but that isn't very much, you know, to do that for somebody you love. But you wouldn't do that for Mrs. Biddy upstairs, would you? He said, no, ma'am. Because she was constantly calling him a black something, which was very hard to bear. So he said, no, ma'am, I wouldn't. Well, I said, you know, that's what Jesus would like you to do. He'd like you to run and open that for her. He said, he would? He would? I said, yes. He says in the Bible, if you run and open this for people you love, there's not very much to that. But if you go and open it for people like Mrs. Biddy, then he says, that's something. He said, he did. All right, he said, I'll do it. And he did. And he did. Now, you see, we talk like that, but do we do it? And yet, the joy it brings. Oh, marvelous joy. To do the thing that doesn't look too easy to do. That's the triumph. And we can't do that until we are aware of our Father's Spirit within. I'll tell you why. Try to do it in your own strength and you fail utterly. Have you proved that? I have. You know, in those early days when by the willpower you think, I'll do it. Oh, you do. But if you don't get a pat on the back for it, you don't feel too happy. You want someone to praise you. Or you make up your mind, all right, I'll ask them to forgive me. So you go along very bravely in your own strength and you say, please forgive me, I was wrong, I shouldn't have done it. What you wish your friend would say is, oh, that's all right, but they don't. They say, I should think so too. That you didn't expect. So you hadn't got the armor of righteousness on, and up comes your temper again. You've got another thing to ask forgiveness for. So you see, we go on in our own strength and fail utterly. We can't do it. But to understand that somewhere within me is this great God of love who understands and forgives me. When I go into that little place where he is and face him and know that he understands, knows that he will just understand everything. And he loves us to take our mistakes to him because he breaks them up into nothing again and we start off anew. Yes, we approach him like that, but a lot of people just go to about the third door from the inner sanctuary because they don't much like to go right into the presence of the light. It reveals them a bit too much. Instead of coming right into the Holy of Holies of the soul and saying, Lord, this thing is me. I keep blaming other people. I keep saying if it wasn't for them, I suppose I would get along all right. But Lord, it isn't. It's me. It's me. It's I who must get right, Lord. And when we do that and we come face to face with Him, there's a warmth that comes over us and we feel clean and we feel fine. And then you see we can approach the people that we may have wronged and say, forgive me, and somehow or other it doesn't matter if they don't want it. It doesn't matter if they say, I should think you would. It's a terrible thing you did. You'd say, yes, that's why I've come to ask you to forgive me. Have a marvelous reaction when you go in His love. Just amazing reaction. I think it's wonderful, you know. When you're filled with God, you don't mind if people call you a fool, because if you're not, what does it matter? Or if they say you're crazy and you know you're not, what does it matter? Isn't it a blessing it isn't true? I always feel so thrilled that the things they say about me are not true. But if they were true, I'd feel bad, wouldn't you? That's the most remarkable part about Jesus. That although that Sermon on the Mount sounds, so hard to do, yet deep underneath every scrap of His instruction is a thrill of joy. A real thrill of joy. A Lutheran minister said to me 2 days ago, I'd taken a service in his church in the afternoon, and he came up to me. He was quite a young man, and I imagine he had a lot of perhaps people in his church who had run it for years almost, and they didn't care for him to run it anyhow, you know. There are lots of congregations like that. They've run the church and they don't want a new minister to run it at all. Actually, you see, it means that there isn't cooperation there, and how can they expect the church to be blessed? The minister is not the church. The church are the people. He is God's instrument. And if he isn't prayed for, if he isn't upheld, he's got some job against a congregation of critics. And there are such a lot in most places. You know, you have a feeling that, he didn't do quite so well today, I wonder why. Or, he was good this morning, I suppose he's on top. Now, this minister, whoever they may be, you have to always be on top, all. But if only the congregation would realize that they've come not to hear the man, but that they've come to bring forth from him, by their faith in God, the very message that God wants for the whole congregation. The church is not the minister. The church is all the people, including the minister. That is the church of Christ. Oh, if we would only understand these things, how much better we get along. Well, this Lutheran minister said to me, I had this church, he was fairly new to it, and he said, am I being criticized? He said, you know, the things that I hear said about me, I'm too unorthodox. He said, it just gets me down. What would you do? He said to me, what would you do? So I said, rejoice and be exceeding glad, for so persecuted they the prophets who were before you. So he looked at me and he said, well, what do you mean? He said, I'm afraid I'm not very interested whether it affected the prophets as whether it affects me. I quite agree with him. And I said, he said, how could I rejoice? I said, well, now, I'm going to ask you something. Any of the things that these people say about you, are they true? He said, not that I'm aware of. I really don't feel that they are justified in what they're saying. Then I said, rejoice because it isn't true. Just rejoice it isn't true. But you would feel in a mess if it was all true, wouldn't you? Why, he laughed so heartily, and I said, imagine, a minister of the gospel and doesn't understand the Sermon on the Mount. Oh, we were great friends from there on. It really is. Another thing there, too, he said, how would you feel about now he's a friend of mine, he said she has a daughter who's very interested in a Methodist minister's son, and of course, you see, we're strict Lutherans. Do you think that would be wise? Well, of course, I've got a terrific streak of humor in me, I'm glad to say. And I said, wise? Well, I wonder if we couldn't try and get hold of Martin Luther and ask him. He said, what do you mean? Well, I said, you know, Martin Luther wasn't a Lutheran. He was Martin Luther. And I don't suppose for a moment he'd care who married or what. I said, you have called yourselves Lutherans after Martin Luther. He wasn't a Lutheran, you are. So how could he tell you what to do about a Lutheran? Well, he laughed again because he saw the common sense of that. Now I said, most of all, let's get Jesus. What would he say? No, it's very unwise for a Lutheran to marry a Methodist. Why, he didn't know anything about Lutherans and Methodists in his day. He perhaps doesn't now. All he knows is about the souls within the people who call themselves Lutherans or Methodists or whatever they are. Are we getting so narrow in this age that we actually think that a name of a church should separate two people? The main thing is, do they love Jesus enough to belong to each other in his love? Oh, if I could only revolutionize some of those ideas. You see, it's tragic that children are brought up to think that that is wrong. How do I know whether the temperament of my children is going to be exactly like mine? How do I know? They might want a different way. My son did. He didn't want the kind of church I'd been in when I was a child. Why should he? If he wanted to love God, why shouldn't he choose the church he wanted to worship in? In any case, he can't worship God at all unless he worships him in his heart. So I never did dictate as to what they should do, but I've got 3 grandchildren and 4 grandchildren. I have to put it that way. You know, by the way, I'll just go off here a little bit. Do you know what it is to be a grandmother and a grandfather? It means that you've arrived at the stage of being a grandmother and a grandfather. But it's possible to be both those before you are a grandmother and a grandfather. That's the most marvelous part about some of these words when we take them apart. Now, I want to come back again to this God who is Spirit in us all. One God, one love, one faith, one hope, one joy, one everything. How then can we say that we are ever alone, ever insecure? There is no insecurity except in your mind. And if God is this to you, if you found him right at the center of yourself, if you know that that's the only place to turn to in time of any difficulty, why, you've just got a treasure, and I've found it. It is the most marvelous thing that nobody can take it away from you. Nobody. Just nobody. Sometimes they come and say to me, oh, it's all very well for you to be teaching this joy and this love and this light. Do you know that this world is going to experience disaster? I said, is it? Do you know what's going to come after that? The supreme reign of the living Christ. I'm not working for the middle part. I'm working for the last part. Now, I'm not going to put my eyes on the middle part. Therefore, you see, our consciousness resting in the supreme and ultimate end knows only joy. Likewise, if you are expecting some trouble in your life, some difficulty, some approaching disaster in your business or home life or affairs, why don't you immediately keep your eyes on the ultimate, the goal that you really desire? Have you ever thought the pictures you make in your mind are the things that come about? I spoke to a high school in Iowa last week, Northwood, and the boys and girls were so struck with this idea that lots of things they're thinking are the things they're going to experience. And I said, how many of the things do you want that you are experiencing? And they didn't want half of them. Well, I said, what are you building them for? An architect, when he's thinking out a house, if he's in a hurry and it isn't perfect in his planning, when that house is up, he'll find his sun porch the wrong side of the house and the kitchen at the wrong end. Then he's got to have an awful lot of alteration before he can get his house straight. But if he plans it perfectly within, that house is perfect without. Therefore, don't let us have pictures on the wall of our mind of anything except God and his wonder. You can't have anything else in your mind. I was asked down in Minneapolis once why I didn't teach about eternal punishment and everlasting fire. I said, I don't know much about it. I think there may be people who could speak with authority on it, and you'd better ask them to come and preach such a sermon, but I don't know much about it. If your mind is stayed upon God, what could you know about eternal punishment? So there must be people, I suppose, to teach those things, but my whole life is centered in bringing people into the joy of his presence. And if they find the joy of his presence, what more will they ever want? They are home with God. They won't know the eating of the husks anymore. They'll just know God in his fullness, with the robe and the ring and the fatted calf. God is that to all his conscious children. All of that. Oh, it's a wonderful thing to know God within. If you don't, you'll never know him without. People who are looking for Jesus to return on a cloud. I don't know anything about that, the way he will return. It may be so. But if I don't know him in my soul, as my spiritual friend and elder brother, I doubt if I would know him on a cloud. We have to know him in our souls. We have to feel the yearning in us that he had by doing the works he did. We have to love as he loved. We have to give as he gave. We have to be like him. And then we know him. Then we know him. But nobody knows God till they live like Jesus, till they do the things that he did. As long as Christians still use the methods of the world to get the things they want, and still run to law to get all their troubles straightened out, instead of doing what Jesus did, they will never know Jesus. Never. And they will never know God. To know God is just to be as happy as the day is long. Here's a little verse just to leave you with parting. Take heed, brethren, lest there be in any of you an evil heart of unbelief in departing from the living God. That's a wonderful thing. Every time you have unbelief in your heart, you have departed from the living God. He hasn't departed from you, but in your consciousness you've departed from him. Every time you have an unbelief in your heart. And then it says there be in any of you an evil heart. Have you ever spelt that word backwards? Evil, spelt the other way, is live. So, if you have any unbelief in your heart, you've reversed a way of life. And instead of living with the living God, you have reversed it and made your thoughts and your lives evil. I think that evil, that word was always so harsh. And ever since I discovered that when you spell devil backwards, it's lived, and when you spell evil backwards, it's live. It just means you've reversed your way of life. You've reversed your whole idea of God. So that is a far better way to think. Then you repent of what you did, or return, and then you have salvation, which is being saved from the conditions you would have brought about if you had not returned. Return and be saved from. Reverse all this unbelief into absolute belief, because you love the source of your being. There is no other source. There is no other center. There is no other security. There is no other love. God is love. God is life. God is light. He is truth. He is wisdom. Well, as one dear old lady said years ago, I'd rather live with the ises than the isn't.